the first thing that you care about is fetching external data. Like that is the kind of the basic building block that we've got here. So what I've got here is just a simple Google spreadsheet, and I put in a Twitter search URL here. So if we visit this URL, we see that this is just the RSS feed for a Twitter search. And you can just get this from the Twitter website. There's no authentication required, anything like that.
Do you want
so
to quick
URL.
Sorry, do you want to quick walk us through that? Just even that basic step.
Yeah, sure. So go to search.twitter, and let's say I want to search for VC funding.
Okay.
So I want to see what people are tweeting about that. So I get a results page like this. I just click on this link here for the feed. I get this URL. I copy this in here. And then we can use there's a function called import feed. I just reference that cell that I just put the URL in. I hit go. And instantly, I have a whole bunch of tweets right inside my spreadsheet. Like, it's right there. And that, like, when I first saw this kind of thing happening, I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, this, before I'd have to have copied and pasted, I'd have to clean up the data. This does everything. It puts everything, like the Twitter username here in the right cell. I've got a link to the tweets. I've got the time. I've got the tweet contents there. That's pretty awesome. And I can try out all kinds of different search queries. And, the power here is that you already know how to use spreadsheets, right? People are already familiar with, constructing formulas and parsing data, filtering data, all that kind of stuff. So, and this is just a way of like you said, putting this on crack because, you can actually import web data directly into this. So this is like the basic building blocks here is the fact that you can fetch external data. But obviously this example is pretty, this is pretty straightforward. So why don't we go to a slightly more tricky example? So that was using the import feed function, but there's another function called import XML. So let's say that I want to get a whole list of VCs who are on Twitter, and I want to get that list into a spreadsheet. So I've got a blog post here that somebody wrote of 100 VCs you should follow on Twitter. This is pretty old, actually. It's from 2009, but whatever. For the purposes of this example, we can use this list. So I've got this list here, and historically, if I want to get this list of usernames into Excel, like I'd have to copy and paste. Maybe it wouldn't work so well. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this import XML function here. So import XML is designed for parsing web data. So instead of fetching the entire contents of the feed like we had before, what we're going to do is we're going to fetch the feed, so import XML, and then I reference this cell with the URL in.
Okay. And
then I'm going to actually parse the data using this XPath here.
Okay. Can you walk us through each one of those commands?
Absolutely, yeah. So XPath looks pretty scary when you start out with it, but really it's pretty straightforward. So let me show you what it is. So import XML, and then I reference the URL here. And we put our import XML statement in quotes, in double quotes. And then the key thing here is that you want to, and this is obviously a very simple guide to XPath. You can read more about it in an online guide. But you use two double slashes like this, which basically says fetch everything defined by what I'm about to say. And then, so I want to fetch a div from the page, but I don't know exactly what div I want to fetch from the code. So if I go back to this blog post here, I really love Google Chrome for this, because you can right click anywhere in Google Chrome and hit inspect elements. Okay. So what you want to do is you see here how I can mouse over the different sections of the page, and I end up with this div class entry content here, which specifies the content that I want to fetch into my Google Docs. I want everything inside that div. So we flip back to the spreadsheet here, and we've got this. We say we want to fetch any div, but then we want to specify where the class equals, and then you use single quotes. We put entry content in there, you close that up, close the statement, and we hit go. Now what that does is you can see that I've actually fetched the entirety of that div class into the spreadsheet, which is a little bit, we've got too much data there, so we're pulling more than we need. So what I need to do is if I come back here, what I've done is I just say from that div here, so this is the statement we had before, fetch the div with the entry content, but then from that, fetch all of the links and fetch the href targets. Now, this is a very common piece of code. You don't need to worry too much about this being complicated. Like, I worry I've already lost some people here. But really, this is every single statement you're going to write in Google Docs looks very much like this. Like this is really totally standard, and you can just play around with it until you get it working. But this a/@href just pulls all the links. So instead of pulling all the links from the entire page, we're just pulling the links from the blog, from that div in the blog.
All right, now Tom, we have some links here that aren't going to Twitter. How do we filter those out?
Yeah, sure. There's a whole bunch of different ways of filtering them, and this comes back really to like the kind of simple formulae manipulation that you might be familiar with from Excel. So we could just do a simple if statement here, and we could say if find Twitter, then v2 else. Oops. Sorry, even I make mistakes sometimes. And we can just drag that formula down, and now you see that it only plucks out the ones that start with Twitter. We'd have to do a little bit more filtering to get rid of these values, but this is like, once you've got the data in here, you can filter it and manipulate it however you want. But you can see how fetching the data is as simple as cleaning up the data in Excel or Google Docs. In fact, cleaning up the data here might be slightly more challenging than fetching the data, but that's still an easy task.
How could a startup leverage this? I mean, like we're looking at this example to pull in some
Sure.
Twitter usernames from a site. Can you think of a specific example that maybe you've used or you've heard of a startup being able to pull in data like this that would otherwise have taken just a long time?
Let me think of a specific example. Well, so let me skip ahead to one of the examples I got later on. So here, this example that I'm going to show you just in a sec fetches the price of a particular product from Amazon. And you can actually fetch that. You can schedule that to fetch it, every day. And I'll walk you through how to do that in a sec. But this kind of example could be great for a startup who wants to keep an eye on your competitors' prices. I know that in the startup world, people can get quite fiercely competitive. So that might be one example of fetching data you might not otherwise have been able to fetch. But also, using this, you might be able to fetch a whole load of blogs from a particular blog directory to do outreach. Startup marketing is a very hot topic. And people always ask, like, how do you get your product out there? How do you get your first 100 users? How do you get covered those first few times before you're famous? And really, it's hard work, right? Like, you've got to reach out to people. But maybe this would be a great way to find either Twitter accounts or blogs or generally people to reach out to. Let's say, whatever niche you're in, if you just do a Google search for top blogs in that niche, you'll find blog posts exactly like this that list blogs in that niche. You can just go fetch all those blogs into a spreadsheet, and this isn't it's not magic. That's not going to get you the exposure, but it saves you a little bunch of time, right? And that's really what we're about here, is just kind of creating those quick efficiencies to save you either doing something by hand or to get you a bunch of data that you might not otherwise have been able to get.
Okay, great.